Today on episode number 578 of the Teaching in Higher Ed podcast, Learning to Teach, Design, and Rest from Nature with Karen Costa.
Produced by Innovate Learning, maximizing human potential.
Welcome to this episode of Teaching in Higher Ed. I'm Bonnie Stahoviak, and this is the space where we explore the art and science of being more effective at facilitating learning. We also share ways to improve our productivity approaches so we can have more peace in our lives and be even more present for our students. What a treat to welcome back to the show Karen Costa. She's a faculty development facilitator specializing in online pedagogy, trauma-aware teaching, climate action pedagogy, and course community design. Karen loves guiding learners through fun, interactive, and supportive learning experiences. Her first book, 99 Tips for Creating Simple and Sustainable Educational Videos, focuses on helping faculty and teachers make creative use of videos in their classrooms. Her second book, Open Minds, Designing and Teaching for ADHD Students, is under contract at Johns Hopkins University Press. Karen is involved in various learning design initiatives, including as a facilitator for the Online Learning Consortium, Online Learning Toolkit, and Lumen Learning. She spent 4 years as a regular writer for women in higher education. Her writing has also appeared in Inside Higher Education, the Philadelphia Inquirer, On Being, and Faculty Focus. Karen graduated from Syracuse University with a bachelor's in sociology. She holds a master's in education in higher education from the University of Massachusetts Amherst and a CAGS in educational leadership from Northeastern University. Karen has a professional certificate in trauma and resilience from Florida State University, a trauma-informed organizations certificate from the University of Buffalo's School of Social Work, a certificate in neuroscience, learning, and online instruction from Drexel University, and a certificate in learning experience design from the University of Central Oklahoma. And today we're fortunate to be able to hear about more ongoing professional learning that she's been doing in biomimicry. Karen is a certified yoga teacher and level 1 yoga for arthritis teacher. She lives in Massachusetts with her family. Karen Costa, welcome back to Teaching in Higher Ed.
I'm so happy to be here. I'm a repeat customer, and that is it's a really cool thing for me because I've always admired your work. So I'm very happy to be here with you and to learn with you today.
I appreciate any time I get to talk to you, and it's one of the places where I can go to feel like we're in solidarity together, just this real spirit of solidarity and comfort and challenge simultaneously, and just such a joy. And I'm going to invite you to take us somewhere. You've talked about nature as a teacher. Would you take us somewhere that nature has taught you something?
Yeah, this is a great way to start. And the only challenge of this question is narrowing it down, because there's been so many great places and moments that I could mention, but I'm going to keep it real simple and bring folks into my backyard, into my little garden. And I always like to meet people where they are, including myself, and sort of normalize the frustrations and limitations that we have in life. So I do not have a green thumb at all. Gardening is something I've tried and failed at many times. I don't know if it's something you can win or fail at, but I've things have not survived under my watch, let's just say. And but a few years ago, I really recommitted to spending more time in nature and with my garden. And a couple summers ago it was a really, really tough summer for me, and mental health and life challenges. And one of the only things I could do, quite literally, when I wasn't just in a lot of sort of life pain, was go into my garden and water my flowers every day. And it was such a consistent thing to know that I was responsible for these plants and they would shine, back their beauty on me. There would be bees swarming around them. It was very grounding and it gave me that daily task to keep me going through those difficult times. And there was very few other things I could do that would sort of ease that pain I was feeling. And my garden was one of them. So there's a ton of research on this. I wasn't imagining things. There's a ton of research on our mental health and well-being and what green spaces can do for us. And that's one of the ways my garden has helped me. And since then, I've been even more intentional about spending time there. This year, my challenge is native plants. If folks want to search, I'm sure we can link to it, the Native Plant Trust. It's to focus on finding plants that are really made for your area, your soil, your climate, and to support the entire local ecosystem. So it's a little bit of a challenge for me, the next level up in my gardening journey. I just bought 3 new native plants. I went to some woman's house and they were in her driveway. It's kind of like an underground community, at least here in Massachusetts. And I'm really excited to see how they go. They're supposed to bring pollinators. They're supposed to work together. More lessons will be coming to me from my garden.
You mentioned the word cyclical, and it
Mm.
reminded me so much. We were at a group of us from my university were at a conference, and our provost took the group to lunch on the final day and invited everyone to share, where's your favorite place in the world? And every
Mm.
other person had some place they had traveled to. They just seemed so adventurous. And I could have
Mm.
picked an adventurous place that I'd been, but I decided to pick my backyard. There's nowhere that I
Mm.
would rather be. And we live in Southern California, and, we, by comparison to other people who also live in Southern California, we would have a decent sized backyard. But to anyone else, almost anyone else in the world that doesn't live in this kind of an environment, it would seem quite small and not glamorous. As some people actually a friend is going to be moving to Montana and just sent me pictures, 2.5 acres. Let's just say that's not what's happening here. But I love this cyclical nature of it. And as I go through stages of grief and sorrow and anger, it truly feels like company to me, but the company changes over time. And Carrie Mandelack, when she came on the show, she introduced us to an app, the Merlin app through the Cornell. And so I'll often be able, the song is different. And right now we're speaking in spring where we live, and the conversations change a little bit. And so there's just been this bird, and I often wonder, is it the same bird, or it just seems like the same bird, but I just don't know enough yet to have a sense of that. But the other day, my husband was out there and they actually got a video of this red-chested, beautiful bird. And then Carrie will send me from her backyard. She has a larger backyard, so she can have one of those AI-powered cameras where it'll identify the bird and also motion detection so that she can send me little clips of who's keeping her company too. And it's just so nice. But yes, that cyclical nature of it, because I know that our lives are also cyclical. And there's just something about noticing and wondering and experiencing the rhythm of that has been so healing for me. And even when it's not healing, it's just a place where I can go and be.
And I think the other lesson for me is that local angle. So certainly we don't want to discount the many gifts of traveling the world, but one of the things in the biomimicry checklist, which I know we're interested in talking about today, and one of the things that a lot of activists and writers are talking about right now is the importance of grounding ourselves in local action and local community when it feels like the national and global context is so overwhelming and so out of control. So There's so much that we can do. There's some climate activists that believe that one of the most impactful things we can do as individuals is to cultivate native plants in our yards or in a local community garden. So that's a great place for people to start if they're feeling I know we've talked about climate action before. One of the smallest, closest, most local, powerful things we can do is to just get into, touch and focus with our yard, with our outdoor spaces. If we live in cities, with our local community gardens, and to spend some time there and see what comes of it.
You mentioned this checklist, and I follow you so closely. Whenever I see you post in any of the various social media, my curiosity is piqued. And this was one of those times where I had no idea that this thing even existed. And the second I'm even through half of a sentence, I thought, oh my gosh, we need to, I need to see if you're available to have a conversation. Tell us about biomimicry. What is it and what got you interested in it?
I love when I talk to somebody about something that I am super passionate about and excited about, and they say, I've never heard of this before. It's like, I don't know if you can tell, like, it's just like kid in the candy shop for me, because I'm excited to share with you, but I'm so excited for you because you get to, go on this amazing journey. So I'm really excited to hear you say that. So biomimicry it's a mindset, and it's also a design methodology. So the mindset is learning from nature rather than learning about nature. So most of us are familiar with learning about nature. So in K through 12, college, biology, chemistry classes, we learned about nature. And biomimicry is different because we're treating nature as our teacher or as our mentor. And we're saying, what can we learn from the non-human natural world? What lessons can we apply in our lives? Because non-human nature has all of these wonderful gifts and all of this amazing design all around us that we can apply to our lives, that we can apply to design, to architecture, to science, and yes, in my example, to our teaching. So I got interested in biomimicry. I remember the day that this clicked for me. I was helping my son study for a third grade science test. So he's a sophomore in high school now. So this is 7 years I've been getting super curious about this. And I came across this concept called symbiotic relationships. And I read one of the symbiotic relationships was parasitism. And that's when one organism is helped, but the other is harmed. And we're very familiar with that, right? Through things like viruses, or speaking of spring, the bugs come out, right? We're very familiar with parasitic relationships. But then the next flashcard when we were studying was something called mutualism. And I can remember the moment when I went, whoa, like, what is that? Mutualism is when both organisms benefit. And in that moment, I saw these, we were using flashcards because, I'm a teacher and that's a great study strategy to help him study. And I saw all like the totality of higher ed in these two flashcards. And I saw that so many of the conversations we have about teaching and learning, particularly in faculty student relationships, are based on that parasitic model. The assumption that if we help faculty, we have to harm students. Or if we help students, we have to somehow sacrifice the educators. And then I saw next to that mutualism, the possibility that both organisms in this relationship could be helped. And since then, I've been, preaching about and fascinated with mutualism. And I started doing more reading, and I came across biomimicry, there's a book that I'm sure we can link to. The author's name is Janine Benyus, and she's a scientist, and she wrote an entire book. She's sort of the go-to person on biomimicry about this idea of learning from nature, nature as teacher, nature as mentor. And then from there, I studied with a program called Learn Biomimicry. They have some short online courses, but this past year, I did their biomimicry educator program. So it was a 6-month intensive program where I studied biomimicry and developed a term-long project, which is the biomimicry checklist for educators, where I have taken these still very highly scientific concepts from the biomimicry field and translated them into practical strategies, mindsets, ways of being in the classroom that educators can use. And they're all grounded in nature as teacher, nature as mentor.
One of the parts of your learning that stood out to me so much has to do with resilience, burnout, and reconnection. How might it look like for us to learn from or receive mentorship from resilient ecosystems in helping us to navigate the challenges in higher education?
Yeah. Nature persists in the face of all kinds of throughout seasons, after disasters, nature and life will find a way. For me, as a person who I live in Massachusetts, so one of the best one of the best examples or lessons of this is the way that the seasons flow here. And we see in winter, everything sort of pulls inward, goes underground, protects itself, hibernates. We do have in the area where I live, we do see the occasional bear. We don't see them in winter. They come out of hibernation in the spring. Looking outside right now, we just have a few buds of green on the trees, but before that, they had shed all of their leaves. So we can look out into the natural world and see nobody's on all the time. So nature is really, really good at resting. I'm thinking now also of my Polish grandmother. She passed away probably 10 years ago. She lived to be 96. And she used to tell me, I'd say, Graham, how are you so strong? How are you still going? And she would say, Karen, when I get sick, she would take, I'm sober, so I'm not recommending this, but she would take a shot of whiskey. I think it was called Manischewitz. It was a Polish whiskey. She would take a shot of whiskey and then she would go in her room in the dark for 24 hours and she would just hibernate. And she'd say, I'm always better after a day. And I always think of that because we tend to keep going. We tend to push through. She had learned I think part of her long life was that she had learned how to go into deep rest. And that's something we see in the natural world often too. Animals know how to hunker down. Animals know how to rest and heal, which we're not as good at. Our minds want us to heal much more quickly than our bodies are able to heal. So for me, one of the lessons is to take time away, to take time off to whatever extent our ability to do that obviously varies. For me, I'm planning time off in July. Leading up to our talk today, I'm feeling pretty overwhelmed. This is my busiest season the next couple weeks. I'm overextended. I'm not proud to say that, but I overextended myself. And the requests for, meetings for July have started to come in. And I have to fight that urge to say, oh, I can start my vacation a couple days later. I cannot, I will not. I have to go into a rest season. I just have to. So I'm saying that out loud to you to hold myself accountable so that if anybody sees me on the internet in July, you can publicly shame me. But yeah, resilience is born of rest, of hibernating, of knowing that we've got to kind of go down into the ground, into the earth in those seasons of quiet and peace in order to begin again and rejuvenate.
Something that I have found still wrestling, I just continue to wrestle with this, is to what extent should we see ourselves as different from one another when it comes to rest? I think sometimes I idealize other people. They seem so good at it and their way seems the right way to do it. I believe, and this may be a fallacy, but I really do believe I'm wired a little bit different toward not resting well on my own checklist of what resting well would look like. I'm not a very relaxed person by nature. And so I think I have the guilt and the shame that if my rest doesn't check off the boxes of what rest is supposed to look like, then I'm not doing it right. And I don't know.
I have so many ideas about this.
Okay.
I have so many ideas. The first image coming to mind, because we're talking about nature as teacher, I'm picturing maybe you're a shark, Bonnie, right? Because sharks, they're still swimming. they're still moving because they got to get that oxygen in their gills. So sharks are very powerful beings and they keep moving. So that's something coming to mind. For me, another one of the lessons of the natural world is this question of diversity. And that word is in the news a lot lately. It's a word that means a lot to me for a lot of reasons. And one of them is that it's just for very logical reasons. Diversity is the foundation of life. So diversity is why there is life on this planet, which is, at the time of this recording, we're it. And that's a pretty amazing thing. And the reason that life has persisted is because it didn't put all its eggs in one basket. There are millions of species and millions of expressions of life. So diversity is strength for me. And when I apply that lens to this question of rest, that tells me that while there might be commonalities, like there might be certain foundations, like that we all need to rest in some expression, in some way, that how we express that might be different. And for me, as somebody who, is neurodivergent, my rest does not look like other people's rest either. And I have definitely struggled with that. My rest is sometimes very active in that, like, my brain doesn't really shut off. So like I've learned that like watching YouTube videos is a good way for me to rest. So like I'm still learning and my brain still has something, because if I don't give it something to do, it goes to anxiety. And that's not fun. So I got to give it something to chew on. Video games are one of the ways that I rest. That's even though my brain is very active, it's how my brain settles. I also am, if I do like a workshop or a talk of some sort, and that's something highly social, my rest looks like crashing for an entire day after and like needing absolutely no, like, dark room, very little stimulation. So, I've learned, I've got 45 years it took me to figure this out, that I don't know what do people do? Like, I guess, like, I think this is lovely, like lying on a beach and like staring off at the water or something. I think that sounds lovely. I've seen people, I go to the beach. I like that. I've seen people do it. I have to bring like 3 books to the beach and I'm like organizing the kids to play the different games. It just looks different for me. So I hear that. I think the message is for people to get to know themselves, to trust themselves, and to experiment with different strategies. But yeah, what we see on the internet of what other people's expression of rest is not always what's true for us. Like I don't nap. like I think that's lovely. And I think, there's an entire book, Rest is Resistance, I believe is the name of it, about the power of napping. And I think that's so lovely. And I love the message of that. And it's a deeply important message. My like physiology does not allow me really to take naps. So that's not going to work for me. So I've got to find other ways that often include activity, but they're my expression of turning down the volume as best I can. And, July, like I said, July is going to be interesting for me. I have to keep doing something. I'll read a lot. I'll take lots of walks. I'll spend a lot of time with the kids because they'll keep my brain active, but I won't really like turn everything off, because for my brain, that turns, the anxiety is just like, hello, it's my turn. So yeah, I've learned that I have to really balance that. I turn down the volume, but if I turn it down too much, things aren't cute anymore.
That is very helpful. Thank you for that. I'm already looking forward to listening back to hearing you say these things and enjoying looking at my notes that I just took on your examples. That's very helpful. A related topic to all of this is just the pressure to produce. And I sometimes wonder how much of this is made up in my head and how much of it is actually real. I mean, I don't think I'm an overly paranoid person. And so I'm wondering, what does nature have to teach me about this pressure to produce? What can we learn from nature in this and wrestling?
When I heard you say pressure to produce, my hand went to my gut. Like I really This conversation is very fortuitous because the past couple of days I've really been in that feeling of there's so many things I want to do in the world. And I think that's a great thing. Like there's so many, not only for fun and for creativity, but there's so many problems, right, that we want to address, and so many areas of opportunity. And there's not enough time for me to do it all. And I try to do more than I can. So one of the things that, as I was looking over notes, kind of thinking about what we might talk about today, one of the words that's part of biomimicry's life's principles. So these are these 6 principles, or 6, some people think of them as like laws of life, or they're sometimes referred to as operating principles for sort of like spaceship planet Earth. And part of life's principles is this idea of limitations. And I don't think we're too good at that word in higher education. We are I'm making generalizations here, obviously, but we're a community of overachievers. And I count myself among them. And this is why, I love that about us. I think folks in higher ed, we love to learn. We often love to read. We love to create. We love to talk about our ideas, and we love our projects. We don't like, I think, this idea of limitations, and limitations are they're part of the operating conditions of this big spaceship that we're on. When I see that word, I notice resistance come up in me, but I also know. So one of my specific limitations is I live with a chronic physical illness, and it flares up at times, sometimes unexpectedly, and when it does, it's a brick wall. There's no arguing with it. There's no way around it. I just have to wait it out. And I've really had to work to learn to appreciate and accept that. And it's not an easy thing to do. So I think what nature teaches us is that limitations are a source of life. They're a condition of life. They are, sort of balanced with this expansiveness, right? So and you can just, I'm looking out at my backyard right now. You can see this balance of sort of limitations and expansiveness. And you can see all the trees and the bushes and the flowers and the animals. They're all sort of like testing the boundaries, like how far can I spread out? But I've got my friend over here. I've got to respect that space. They're expanding and they're growing, but within these laws of life, within these limitations. And I think to bring this back to climate change and connect that to this productivity piece, this idea that we should be able to live without any rules, without any limitations, that we can experience endless growth, is part of our sort of socioeconomic system that we live in, that has led us to the point we are at as a species. And we can see that, right? Like sort of that saying, as above, so below. If we look at the state of the natural world around us and how this idea of no limitations is going, I think it reflects back to us as individuals what that experience of, I don't have any limitations. I can do everything. I can do everything. And it's like this, this sort of personal global warming that we're each experiencing, leading to burnout. Like these word choices are, there's a lot of overlap between the personal and the big picture going on here. So I think learning to live and to embrace limitations is a really big lesson. I say all this as like literally 5 minutes before this, I was like kind of staring at my computer like, oh my gosh, I got to do something differently. I'm overextending again. How am I back here? So it's really nice for me to have a chance to say this out loud, to remind myself of the beauty and the gift of accepting limitations.
I can't tell you how helpful this is for me. And thank you for your vulnerability there. As of this conversation, I am dreading, maybe is not the right word, but I'm about to release an episode out into the wild in which I admit something that I really don't want to admit. Ooh. And yet I know that it will be healing for people, and it's just real in it, but it's just like saying the yucky parts out loud. Yeah. But it's just too easy to look from a distance and have it seem like, I mean, I sort of, Karen, I feel like we know each other. I would call you a friend, and yet I still would consider, like, I thought you were going to show up with having this all figured out, and it feels so good that you don't.
No, this time, I was saying to somebody earlier today, this desire, this feeling like there's never enough time. I think it's a really lovely thing because I think it does express a certain engagement with life, right? Like it's, this feeling of just wanting to do it all and partake in it all and experience it and read it all. I mean, oh my gosh, the books I want to read, like forget it. Shows, like we've been talking, we have a lot of good shows going as a family. Like, how are we going to fit in and the new Star Wars show Andor? There's a joy in it. There's like a deep hunger to experience it all. I think that's a beautiful thing. And I think there's got to be that coexistence with, and there are limitations. And those limitations are not a bad thing. They're there to protect us. They're there to make sure we don't, the tree doesn't spread out into the other trees, area so that we can all flourish, so that we can all find that space of mutual benefit. Limitations can be a very beautiful thing. I think they can help us be more creative. They can help us be more adaptable to life, and they can help us identify our priorities. That's I think something that's going to be my next step, is this idea of I can do anything, but I can't do everything. And I've got to perhaps lovingly cast some things into the wind and say, I wish you the best, but there's just something else that's more closely aligned with my values. So yes, I'm in that with all the rest of us, for sure.
This is the time in the show where we each get to share our recommendations. I have two. The first one has been recommended. In fact, Karen, 2 days in a row, I did 2 interviews and both people recommended this show. But since I try to only recommend something once, but I can certainly recommend things other people have recommended. I wanted to recommend The Residents. Have you seen it yet, Karen?
No. Is that a medical show?
No, it is inside the White House.
I have seen it.
Oh, okay.
I had medical resident in my head. Yes, I have seen it. It's delightful. It's got birding in it.
Birding.
Yes.
I could not feel like I wasn't planning on recommending this, but you're just talking about all these things. For those, this doesn't ruin the plot for listeners that may not have seen it yet. The main character will be in the middle of attempting to solve a crime. And you know that if you watch the 30-second preview, that this is about a murder that took place in this case, the fictitious White House in the story. And she'll just be in the middle of solving it and all of a sudden starts thinking about birds and talking about birds and looking for birds. And it's like, I mean, it really is, to me, I thought biomimicry, that's what's happening in that show. She's learning from nature.
Yeah, there's a lot of lovely parallels as she's searching for the solution to this mystery at the same time that she's searching for the next bird she needs to get on her list. And I want to emphasize it's a cozy mystery. So if people hear murder, I am very sensitive. I can't watch any of the scary shows I used to. I'm no longer allowed. So this is a cozy mystery. So yes, there's a murder mystery involved, but it's done in a very cozy, warm way. So my sensitive soul was able to watch it and enjoy it. So definitely I can recommend that as well.
All right. My second recommendation, I'm cheating a little bit here. I've recommended this song before. It's called Don't Lose Sight. It's by a band called Lawrence, and I like their acoustic-ish version of it. But how I'm going to cheat is that I'll just recommend their whole album that is called acoustic-ish, an album-ish. And so they have lots of acoustic-ish versions of their songs. And they're so much fun, such a fun band. And I want to just read some of the lyrics to Don't Lose Sight, which is why I recommended it in the first place. Oh, such a long time ago. And I am just in a season where I need this so bad. So I'm going to read some lyrics and then I'm going to encourage us through them. So the verse 1 starts out with, "Are you kidding me? I'm getting sick of the industry. I've had enough of the make-believe. Oh, please. Oh, please. Am I lost or found? I'm getting sick of the ups and downs. No need to give me the runaround. I'm out. I'm out." And then to spare us from getting banned in countries, let's just say that this next one is a word that is like the word stuff, but is, in some countries considered to be a curse word. So I'm just going to say this stuff's going to kill me, but I won't let it. And I try to give them hell, but they don't get it. So I tell myself when I sleep at night, don't lose sight, baby. Don't lose sight. And they try to give me up, but I won't give in. And this life will get you down, but I keep living. So I tell myself when I sleep at night, don't lose sight, baby. Don't lose sight. And it goes through a number of other verses. And then toward the end, what I love about it is it kind of goes on this mantra of this stuff's never going to change. It ain't never going to change. It ain't never going to change. And I feel just the rage as I listen to it, feeling so much like I'm not alone in that rage and frustration in current circumstances. And yet it shifts then at the very end, because it says that stuff's never going to change, but also I'm never going to change. And when I listen to the song on repeat, by the way, it generally shows up at the top of my list of songs that I listen to in any given year, wanting to just root down in my values that are not going to change. And yes, it is unlikely that it's all going to, become unrecognizably good at some point. Those challenges are going to be there, but so am I. So are you. So are we going to be there in community, working in solidarity toward a better future. And I found encouragement in it and just wanted to share that. And Karen, I'm going to pass it over to you for whatever you'd like to recommend.
Thank you, Bonnie. If you heard any scribbling, it was me writing down the name of that song to check out. I think we're all going through it to with varying degrees of privilege and protection, but I think we're all going through it. And, I just want to remind people that even though we're in this societal, struggle and these societal conditions, that you individually are still deserving of support, whether that be social support, spiritual support, medical support. Just because the world is really messed up doesn't mean that folks are not deserving of that. So I think sometimes people hesitate to reach out for help because they're like, it's the system. It's just everybody's struggling. And yes, that's true. And I want people to get the help that they deserve. Okay. So my recommendation, I actually changed my mind, Bonnie. I had something in mind when we started, but I just remembered something else that I did in the past couple of weeks that was really powerful that I think will be so many of your listeners, it will resonate with. I took a writing workshop through an organization called the Op-Ed Project, and it was a workshop called Writing to Change the World. It's a 2-day workshop. It's live, synchronous. It was about 3.5 hours each day. And it was the most well-facilitated online learning, live online learning experience I've ever had. The facilitators are excellent. They are like seasoned, celebrated, award-winning journalists who lead us through this very engaging, very powerful workshop on writing op-eds. And they give us these tremendous examples of op-eds that have changed government policies, that have gotten huge grants, that have gotten people jobs, that have transformed people's lives through writing an op-ed, which is often, about 800 words. And they give you a really clear map as to how to do that. The cost is very affordable, but they do also offer scholarships. So if somebody wants to do it, there's often an avenue to make that happen. It is a woman-centered, woman-led organization, wonderful diversity within the facilitators and the students and the learners who are there. Highly recommend. I hope we can link to them. It's an amazing organization. I think people need an outlet for some of that rage and some of that fear. And this is a really proven way to create, meaningful change in our world. And, writers out there, I definitely encourage you to check it out. Or if you're writing curious, highly, highly recommend this organization and that writing workshop.
Oh my gosh, that sounds incredible. I'm going to
you would love it, Bonnie.
Oh,
I mean, you would love it. And They operate on like a, they don't do formal marketing. They kind of operate on word of mouth. So like if you like me and Bonnie and you're hearing me say this and there's a little zing, you're next in line. They're like, pass the torch to the next person and the next. So I took that call very seriously. You would love it, Bonnie. And I know people who love your work and listen to this would love it as well. And it's a great way to make meaningful change.
It sounds amazing. You were joking about scribbling down the name of that album. And I, of course, I feel like we're already offline and I'm already going up and checking it out. I'm also going to put in the show notes for people who might want to get inspired by an op-ed that I found particularly powerful. It was written by a colleague of mine who's been on the show. I know we have people listen who are Christians. I mean, I also know we have people listening who are not Christians. He wrote Against Christian Nationalism, and it got published in a major outlet out here in Orange County, California, where I live. And I just think it would be inspiring and informative, again, regardless of one's religious identities. But this is something that is not something that history would tell us is not a great idea. And he just does it in such a compelling way to write against that. And I think that might be, inspiring to people just to get to see an op-ed from someone who this is not like their professional. That's Karen, kind of the theme of what we've been talking about, where it's like, it seems like, oh, you would only do that if you already knew how to do that. And it's kind of like, well, no, this is accessible to any of us to do. Yeah. And this sounds like a wonderful resource to help us.
Yeah, one of the things they do really well is to help you identify what your expertise is and areas that you can speak as an expert on. And they talk a lot about how women discount our expertise. So definitely there's so many people we can reach through writing and through op-eds, and they give you lots of examples of how to do that. So I hope the next person in line will listen to that call and check it out.
I'm so glad we got to have this conversation. And Karen, as always, I am so looking forward to the next one. And I suspect it'll be coming out of the blue where I go, wait a minute, I've never heard of that. Or perhaps I've never heard of that way of looking at something. Thank you so much for the gift that you are and all your contributions. And thank you in advance for the radical rest you'll be taking in July.
I promise I will. Thanks, Bonnie.
So wonderful to get to talk once again with Karen Costa for today's episode. Today's episode was produced by me, Bonnie Stachowiak. It was edited by the ever-talented Andrew Kroger. Podcast production support was provided by the amazing Sierra Priest. If you've not yet signed up for the weekly update from Teaching in Higher Ed, it's time to head over to teachinginhighered.com/subscribe. You'll receive the most recent episodes, show notes, as well as some other resources that don't show up in those show notes. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you next time on Teaching in Higher Ed.